next speaker, which is Mr. Pradeep, is it Goel? Do I pronounce it correct? From Greece, Goel, from Greece. Very welcome to you, and we're looking forward to hear from what you have to present to us today. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here, and thanks everyone for joining. Yeah, it's a pleasure to present. I would like to engage the audience in the conversation, so I'll try to keep the presentation part short and introduce to you what we are doing at SolveCare. And I hope that you will feel comfortable asking questions either during or at the end of the presentation. Brief introduction about myself. I have spent my entire career working in healthcare administration, both in terms of the private insurance, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and as well as a government space, Medicare and Medicaid, and children health insurance and SNAP and TANF programs, which target and serve various different disadvantaged populations in the US. I'm currently running SolveCare, which started about 3 years ago, with from the lessons learned over the last 30 plus years in healthcare, and trying to implement a different model of care delivery and benefit administration, with the view that we often forget about the patient and the provider, who are the two pillars of healthcare, and we get very busy in terms of benefit administration and utilization management and cost containment and fraud prevention. But in that whole litany of concerns, what really often gets lost is the patient and the provider have an effective and reliable and secure way of communicating so they can produce a better outcome for the patient. So we often forget about health and care about the patient. And as a CIO of a Blue Cross, I saw us investing literally hundreds of millions of dollars building systems that were not serving the patient or my physician groups. So I left all that perch of executive perch in these companies and organizations to start SolveCare that, in my mind, realigns the interest and focus of the patient and the doctor with the rest of the stakeholders. So a bit of an introduction. We are a blockchain platform, and we are certainly seeing significant growth in the use cases and the adoption of blockchain in all stakeholders. What's really interesting is that one of the key stakeholders in the market that is looking at blockchain and adopting it is a pharmaceutical and life sciences market. And that's been a revelation for me, particularly coming from the payer industry, from the healthcare administration industry, that the role of the pharma in healthcare delivery certainly can be and is expanding through the use of an auditable collaborative fabric that a blockchain represents. More on that later. We are starting to see, in terms of overall healthcare market, also a significant growth in blockchain interest and adoption. I will talk about how many different ways our platform is currently deployed in the healthcare delivery ecosystem, but it is a very noticeable, not just an interest and a proof of concept, but we are starting to see projects and clients reach for a much greater and much more impactful use cases than the initial POCs that everybody was focused on. Now, quick note about what is blockchain. So blockchain is complex to understand in one way, but it's very simple to understand in another way. Blockchain is essentially a decentralized ledger. It's like having, instead of having a single copy of your spreadsheet that you email around with your colleagues, think of it as everybody having the same spreadsheet and all of them syncing in real time with each other. And that's essentially what a blockchain is. It's a decentralized, distributed copy of a ledger that everybody can share, and everyone can be sure that their copy is the same as everyone else's. And that is accomplished through a series of cryptographic and technological advances that blockchain represents. But fundamentally, it's a decentralized, no single authority, always synced ledger. You can use this ledger to do a lot of things. Obviously, the most famous use case of blockchain is using this decentralized ledger to build cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. But when you apply this ledger concept to other sectors like healthcare, it can be a framework for doing things that centralized databases do not or should not do. And this property of blockchain, the decentralized, distributed, no central authority, but always in sync ledger, is what we are using at SolveCare to coordinate care and benefits between patient and all the other stakeholders. And if everyone can share this digitally secure ledger, then we can coordinate benefits, we can coordinate payments, we can coordinate care opportunities, we can coordinate care gaps, and so on and so forth. And this property is what we are leveraging, among others, to build out a truly global healthcare platform where different entities can participate in different roles and perform their functions in relationship to other entities on the network. So SolveCare over the last 3 years has been successful in attracting some marquee clients. One of our big clients is Boehringer Ingelheim, which is a large pharmaceutical, very well-known pharmaceutical company in Germany, and we are partnered with their US division. And then we have Arizona Care Network, which is a large network of physicians, primarily centered in the metropolitan area around Phoenix, serving almost 300,000 patients. And that network of physicians has a very interesting and effective use case using the blockchain as a platform. One of the most exciting value propositions that we have come across in our conversations with our clients is bringing the pharmaceutical organizations to the table in a manner that is aligned with the patient and providers' interest and the ability to deliver care. Our pharmaceutical clients are looking at publishing auditable, verifiable, evidence-based care coordination networks, which are truly independently verifiable as being in the best interest of the patient and usable by the provider on a need basis that facilitate evidence-based care protocols. So the idea is that if the pharmaceutical company can create an independently verified evidence-based care protocol and publish it on the blockchain, and all the participants of the network, voluntarily or mandatorily, depending upon the network design, are bound to deliver care according to that protocol, or at least guided by that protocol in making their healthcare decisions, both in terms of care provider and care receiver, then we can drive better results. We can identify care opportunities. We can ensure that the patient is taking their prescriptions on time and not forgetting to do refills, and the provider's administrative burden in terms of care continuity and care follow-up can be automated by a protocol on the chain. And if there is a dispute about the care protocol, then the blockchain being fully auditable allows everyone to establish who did what, when, how, and for whom, and it eliminates this risk of the unknown, as well as it reduces the liability around whether the right care was given at the right time, because the protocol can be used to verify whether the results, whether the actions were taken in congruence with the best evidence-based protocols. So this model we have used to do a number of things. One of the things that we are doing is to facilitate an optimal prescription management model, where the patient is able to understand not only what their prescription is, how they're supposed to manage and take their prescription, but also to automatically facilitate post-prescription care continuity between the doctor and the patient, and to enable family members or the pharmacy or even the insurer who has a stake in ensuring that the prescription is given, filled, refilled, and taken to full maturity are all participants in that prescription management. So it essentially creates a network of caring entities who can surround themselves or wrap themselves around the patient's needs and opportunities. Having said that, one of the key elements of a platform like ours is that the patient choice. We believe fundamentally that patient is not disinterested in their own care. The party that has the most accurate information about what their symptoms are, what their prescriptions actually are, the ones they're actually taking, not the ones in the drawer, and who have an understanding of when they need care. At least in part, the patient has to have that information. The physician is certainly qualified to provide the optimal care model and to ensure that the patient is being served properly. but the patient should not be and must not be treated as a dim-witted, non-responsive participant or a beneficiary. We need to engage them. And we see the patient more than a single individual. We see the patient as an entity comprised of spouses and children and grandchildren and parents and grandparents who have a strong interest in the patient's well-being. So we have built the concept of care networks that actually bring together care providers and care receivers and carers who care about the patient, as well as administrative entities who need to participate in the management of that healthcare ecosystem. So in effect, a care network allows for all the parties to link in and collaborate through the care network in a manner that is then ultimately based on a clinically sound and evidence-based care protocol. Having said that, one of our great successes has been the Diabetes Care Network, which was designed in collaboration with Boehringer Ingelheim. And the notion here is that using American Diabetes Association's guidelines, we focus on a certain population that is at risk from having a combination of type 2 diabetes and other conditions like heart conditions and hypertension, and to focus on reducing the fatality rate of that particular at-risk population. And this network was designed to allow patients and their family members, what we call their care circle, care providers, and care coordinators who are either stationed at the healthcare delivery organization or even at the payer organization, to ensure and monitor that the patient is getting is doing everything they can to avoid the risk of cardiovascular events later on in their life because they have failed to take appropriate preventative care or medication compliance and or regular checkups and managing their disease to a certain acceptable range of values like A1C values and so on. But unlike a self-service application that you download and you hope that the patient will follow through, and we know that adoption rate of self-service care model is under 2%. This is a coordinated care model where a patient's compliance or non-compliance or care opportunities or reminders or refills or annual checkups or any other key indicators of care are transmitted on the blockchain to all parties to whom the patient has permitted. So a care coordinator, the physician front office, the care circle, those entities have a common view of what is happening in the patient's life, which then can trigger a lot of automation and intervention right at the time of need rather than after the fact, look back and say, well, we missed 3 opportunities to administer certain care to this patient because no one was coordinated with each other. So this model has proven to be quite powerful in managing not just diabetes. We are applying the same concept to a variety of other disease conditions like mental health and depression, suicide prevention, and so on. And the notion here is that every single entity on the network has a different view of the same event. So an event or a non-event can both trigger very different views from a patient perspective versus from a physician perspective or from a family member perspective. And each of those wallets on the network are aligned with each other in terms of having the same ledger and the same care events, but how they respond and what they do can be entirely role specific. And you would expect the provider to look at different view of the patient data than the patient themselves, but they're all operating on the same ledger in the end. So having done that, we also started to apply the same model of care around behavioral health, focusing on diseases such as dementia and schizophrenia, Parkinson's and epilepsy, and so on. Of course, the objective always is to identify care opportunities and to ensure that the care model that is based on a evidence-based care protocol is communicated to all parties in real time through their wallet so they can take optimal action at the point of need or at the point of opportunity rather than retrospectively or waiting for a in-person visit or a telehealth session to be initiated. And those are always incongruent with the actual need. So this is moving us towards a much more real-time intervention model with the underlying care protocol being visible to all. So it is possible for the physician to override the protocol if they believe the case is not compliant with the normal traditional protocol and they can do that. But that deviation is then a very conscious choice, and it allows for that the protocol to be present as a framework, visible and actionable, and then it can be overridden by the physician, of course, as needed. So we have implemented a completely different model around behavioral health, which is more focused on things like currently with the COVID-19, we have pivoted to include employees working from home, dealing with extraordinary level of stress and or isolation and all the mental health issues that it's driving. But it's just another population group that we are addressing through the same network. One of the most exciting things that we have learned over the years is that patient ultimately responds better to their loved one's intervention than they do to any kind of a threat or a doomsday scenario. It's much more likely that my mom's going to take her medication more timely if her granddaughter is stinging her and reminding her that her medication is overdue than if we show her videos about how terrible a thing would happen if she doesn't take her medication on time. So our view of the patient is not individualized. Our view of the patient is the patient represents an ecosystem of people who care about the patient, and we want to engage them in the care delivery as well. Underlying all this, and on top of the blockchain, we have implemented a token called the Solve token, which is essentially a digital voucher system that allows for fully auditable payment or value exchange between wallets. So in terms of facilitating patient to provider payments, insurer to provider payments, from employer to patient payments, and employer to insurer payments, all of these payment modalities can be made real time and programmed using a Solve token. So in effect, we have taken all the delay and friction out of facilitating payment between healthcare entities by making this payment zero cost in terms of the transfer cost. Instead of paying 2.5% on a credit card or 3 days to wait for an ACH to come through or an EFT gateway to be implemented, essentially the token being fully auditable and fully traceable becomes the much more effective vehicle to be linked to the actual care events and care delivery models. So overall, we are launching a number of different networks, all accessible through the care wallet at the patient's choice: diabetes care, mental health, and we're also adding a charity network around procuring prosthesis, custom prosthesis for children who cannot afford it. We have recently launched a global telehealth exchange to allow for teleconsultations across borders between patients and doctors who wish to engage in second opinion and or access care that is not available to them otherwise. Team care for mental health for remote work employees and so on. But the real objective here is to illustrate the point that when you build a decentralized ledger that everyone can trust because it is auditable, it's transparent, but it's not modifiable accidentally or intentionally, then care delivery can move away from the siloed system model that I was such a proud owner and builder of over the last 3 decades, and move towards where we really can reinsert the patient at the heart of the care model and really wrap the care model around the patient with the physician directing the care, rather than all the rest of the entities defining what the care should look like, and the patient and the physician are essentially at the tail end of that chain. So this is a very different approach. And I will finally say that at Blue Cross, if I had a solution like this, I probably would have had a much better relationship with my provider network. My efforts to improve health and wellness of my population would have been met with less skepticism because my intentions and my governance model would be as transparent as they needed to be. And as a result, the accusation that you're just collecting data to deny me care or deny my claims or do utilization management would be easily overcome by the transparency of the care protocol that is auditable and independently verifiable, which means that my protocol, if it is truly in the best interest of the patient, would not be subject to the doubt and skepticism that, listen, are you really serving the patient? Are you serving the Blue Cross bank account? And that decentralization of information and the ability to keep it secure and position it in the hands of the patient is the reason I left the Blues to come and start self-care. So four goals, right? Ultimately, the quadruple aim: improve the quality of outcomes, reduce the cost of care, enhance the patient and the provider experience, and my most important one is put a smile back in the act of practicing medicine. When did we tell our doctors to go to medical school for a decade and then learn to become a data entry clerk? Somewhere along the way, we made that the mandate of medicine. And our view is automate that. Get rid of all this noise and friction that keeps a physician away from practicing medicine, and give them the tools and the information to actually engage with the patient. So that's our vision and our mission. We have been incredibly fortunate to have the support of a very big global community and some very compelling clients. But we are still in the early stages. We have a lot of journey ahead of us, but we are excited to come here and talk to all of you and understand what might be opportunities to further implement our platform in different use cases. I will wrap up by saying the company is based in several parts of the world. I'm currently in our Kiev office, but we have offices in DC and Fort Lauderdale, London, Estonia, and Singapore, and a few more opening soon. I am joined by Dr. David Hanekom, who is was the Chief Medical Officer at Blue Cross when we were both there, and now he's my Chief Medical Officer here, in charge of ensuring that the care protocols are implemented on evidence-based guidelines and comply with the best interest of the patient. So that's a bit of summary about SolveCare. I'm going to stop here so we have some time for questions and or for comments and feedback.
Is there anybody that has a question for Mr. Pradeep? Thank you very much for a very good presentation.